A Complete Unknown is a musical biopic directed by James Mangold, who co-wrote the screenplay with Jay Cox about iconic American singer-songwriter Bob Dylan. Against the backdrop of a vibrant New York music scene and tumultuous cultural upheaval, Bob Dylan, an enigmatic 19-year-old from Minnesota, arrives in the West Village with his guitar and revolutionary talent, destined to change the course of American music. Based on the 2015 book Dylan Goes Electric by Elijah Wald, the film portrays Dylan through his earliest folk music success until the momentous controversy over his use of electric instruments at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival. Timothée Chalamet serves as a producer and stars in the lead role of Dylan, with Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, and Monica Barbaro in supporting roles. The film's title is derived from the chorus of Dylan's 1965 iconic single, Like a Rolling Stone. This review will be spoiler-free. This film is not perfect, but there is certainly a lot to love about it. I have been waiting to see this film for months and months, and I finally got the chance. Did it live up to my expectations? Well, I have no notes on the first half. I thought it was wonderful. I was loving it. This is the kind of film that reminds you that you do not have fatigue for the genre that it's a part of, but just for the mediocrity and clichés that have plagued it. This film avoids many of the musical biopic clichés by focusing in on Bob Dylan as a reclusive and elusive artist, and how his process affects the people around him. It avoids emphasizing his fame and career highlights, and in turn doesn't feel like a Wikipedia page dump. Absent are the cookie-cutter and insincere scenes you expect to see, such as the photo shoot and chart positions over a montage of one of his most famous songs, cameos from other famous musicians, ham-fisted references for die-hard fans, and the overstuffed soundtrack full of greatest hits. The film feels very slice of life, therefore it avoids the typical biopic structure of the rise to fame, from poverty and trauma, to the explosion of success, to the drug-filled public downfall, to the comeback. It also largely avoids having the archetypal friend, mentor, bandmate, turned villainous manager, producer character. It only chronicles a few years in Dylan's life, so for that reason, it is very refreshing. One thing that many may overlook about this film is how it actually uses its songs. There are quite a few scenes of Dylan tinkering away on a guitar during conversations, and you can hear embryonic elements of some of his most iconic songs. Sometimes we get to hear more developed or finished versions later, and sometimes we don't. We often don't get to hear the songs played in full, and many of the songs are repeated due to their significance to the story. These scenes of him writing feel genuine and organic. It isn't just him randomly sitting down with an inquisitive look and then making up his most iconic song on the spot exactly as it sounded upon release. There aren't any scenes of characters saying lines and making a beat casually in the background and then everyone stopping and getting inspired. We have seen that so many times, and I'm thankful that it is not the approach taken here, especially since one of the themes of the film is how the poetry of Dylan's songs are wholly unique and can only come from him. Sure, there are some familiar beats, but overall this film did a pretty good job of avoiding familiarity. James Mangold is a very solid director, known for films like Copland, Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. He isn't an amazing director, but some of those films are pretty great, so he knows how to deliver a good overall experience that isn't flashy. His Johnny Cash biopic, Walk the Line, is maybe the best musical biopic I've ever seen. Many of his films have a golden sheen to them, and for this film, I like how it looked because of that. It gave a slightly dreamy and vintage look that felt suitable for the 1960s. The only scene I thought was ugly was a very early scene that takes place in a car at night with Chalamet and Norton. There were definitely some lighting issues there. But otherwise the film looked pretty good. The 1960s are recreated in a very authentic way. Often films will go for a nostalgic look where everything is loud and trendy. This doesn't accurately represent the era. This film's version of the 1960s feels real and lived in. The costume design is great, recreating multiple outfits known to Dylan fans, as well as more eclectic and simple fashion for other characters in the film. The reason I say that the film is not perfect is that I have some issues with the second half of the film. Once the film jumps to 1965, it feels a little bit lost structurally and thematically. The filmmakers slowly find difficulty in crafting a meaning for the film. The film is called A Complete Unknown, of course, so it is very much aware of how mysterious Dylan is to this day. It's embracing that. But his intense privacy kind of hinders you if you want to examine him in this format. It feels weird walking out of a film feeling as though you didn't really learn much about the protagonist. We learn that he is closed off, and we learn that he likes to be that way. Of course, it is more nuanced than that, but my point still stands. I understand that this is part of the point of the film, so I respect it, but it doesn't always play so well in the second half to see the characters around Dylan routinely affected by the same behaviours. However, I could argue against myself in the sense that I shouldn't expect some huge cinematic character arc, considering this is a short window of time in Dylan's life and he's not going to progress all that much as a person in that time. The runtime doesn't help this feeling, as it is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and I would argue 15 to 20 minutes too long. The second half is certainly enjoyable, but these are my honest feelings from seeing it just the one time. Timothée Chalamet once again proves that he is a true movie star. His performance is fantastic. You can tell he put a lot of work into the performance, but it is not an imitation. He has been working on this since before the first Dune. He inhabits Dylan with his posture, hand gestures, voice, and facial expressions. This is not an easy performance to pull off, as Dylan is such a famously eccentric character. It is clear that Chalamet wasn't granted the same amount of prep for Wonka, as I had issues with his singing in that film. Due to Wonka, I wasn't sure whether he would nail the singing here, but he does. Dylan's voice is very specific, and it has been imitated many times over the years. Chalamet sounds like Dylan, but he also sounds like himself, and you can tell that he is feeling the songs as he performs them. He absolutely deserves his Oscar nomination, and I wouldn't be upset if he won. Elle Fanning is an actress that I've been a fan of for a long time. She's done many great films like The Neon Demon, My Neighbor Totoro, 20th Century Women. They're just a few of my favourites. Here she plays Sylvia Russo, a character that is based off of Susie Rotolo, Dylan's girlfriend at the time. The two are famously pictured together on the cover of Dylan's album The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Though Dylan requested the film not use her real identity, the Russo character is considered as Rotolo in all but name. You can see why Dylan is protective over her. There was a real love between them. Sometimes I wished the film had given her a little more depth outside of her being an activist and just wanting Dylan to communicate more, but Fanning predictably does a great job regardless. Monica Barbaro plays famous singer-songwriter Joan Baez, who has an on and off again relationship with Dylan as they often play together at festivals and on tour. Barbaro turns in a great but understated performance, so understated in fact that I am surprised that she has received the Best Supporting Actress nomination at the Oscars. However, it is not undeserved, they just usually go for more flashy performances. She is probably the most compelling supporting character in the film, and I enjoyed the chemistry that Barbaro had with Chalamet. Similar to Fanning's character though, she doesn't always get a lot of characterization. Barbaro has a great singing voice in the film, which you get to hear a lot of. Edward Norton plays famous singer-songwriter Pete Seeger, who is depicted as the man who discovers Dylan and aids him in the industry, but Dylan has opinions of him that paint him in a more negative light. Norton does a good job singing in the film, but his character also lacks the kind of big scenes that I would expect the Academy to go for, and yet he is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He does deliver a good performance, as expected, but at times he exits the narrative and you forget about him before he pops up again. The rest of the cast is quite good, featuring Dan Fowler, Scoot McNairy, Eriko Hatsune, and Boyd Holbrook, in a particularly striking turn as Johnny Cash. The first half of this film worked much better than the second half did, structurally and thematically. However, it offers a fresh perspective on the genre, and a sincere depiction of Bob Dylan as a person and artist. Timothée Chalamet gives a terrific performance, and the music itself is integrated perfectly. Sometimes I wish this film had more to say, but with a figure like Dylan, maybe it shouldn't. He is arguably the greatest lyricist of all time, and his lyrics speak for themselves. This film preserves the privacy that he wants to have. This is one of the better musical biopics that I have seen.